Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this second webinar of the Export Action webinar series. So last week we dove into the value proposition and how you draft a good value proposition for your target buyer. Today we're actually going to look at the selling side of things. We're going to look at sales processes, how you structure them, how to generate leads, and how you can also convert them into meetings as well as hopefully successful new businesses. My name is Daniel Sonneveld and I'm a senior market advisor and I work from the Amsterdam office supporting new and early stage exporters with export activities in the European market. With me today, I'm happy also to introduce Gary McCardle. He's a director at Full Circle Management Solutions, and he brings a wealth of experience when it comes to international business development, as well as market entry into new markets. Welcome, Gary. And maybe start first with a housekeeping announcement. So this session will be recorded, and we will share the recording as well as the slides after this session. And if you have a question, then you can ask your question in the Q&A box, which is on top of the bar in your screen. So yeah, what can you expect of today's webinar? Why is this topic actually relevant? Because if we look at the sales process, we really know that this is part of the execution phase of your go-to-market plan. So as a company, you did your market research, you selected your market, and you're actually really much in that part where you're going to sell to your target buyer, which is a really exciting stage, of course, but it's also a challenging stage. And what we've learned from working with new and early stage exporters already, and also in the previous program of Get Exporting, is that companies can also see this stage as quite challenging. So what we see is that companies still find it difficult to find the right buyers, to identify the right decision makers for them, how to craft a right approach for your target buyer, how to actually approach them, as well as to structure your sales process. How do you embed this into your daily routine in your business? So this is definitely not something you do on a Friday afternoon. It's really something you have to really structure in your business, and a clear process will improve your focus and hopefully also convert these leads into real deals. So we hope that after this session, you will learn, of course, a lot of new things, but you also structure your sales approach a little bit more. And of course, also have a positive mindset to bring your sales to a new level. For me, without further ado, let's move to the presentation of Gary. The floor is yours.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thanks for the introduction. And yes, folks, I'm delighted to be here today for the next up until 3 p.m. to discuss the very, very important topic, as Daniel has quite rightly said, of developing and getting to the stage whereby you can actually create and agree on sales meetings. And it's a challenge that faces an awful lot of micro enterprises, small businesses. I've worked with many over the last 20 years of my career, but there are particular best practice ways of achieving success in that whole realm of getting in front of the right people. And I emphasize the right contacts and the right people who are making decisions around whether to purchase your products or services, or it might be to identify the appropriate partners in export markets as well. So we've got a lot to cover in the next 45 minutes, opening up questions at the end of the hour. What I want to cover is, as you can see on the slide there, is the first section will be around building the right databases, building the right contact lists in selected export markets, talk about methods, talk about key sources, and very importantly, structuring that whole aspect of the business. I'll move on then to section 2, which will focus then on securing the meetings. What sort of approaches do you make? What channels do you utilize in terms of getting in front of the right people and making the right first impressions? And I'm going to show you as many examples in the second section as possible, and a couple of good case studies around how we've achieved success utilizing best practice methods and being organized and being very targeted. So yes, and then a quick summary at the end, and then we'll move into Q&A. So if any questions that you have, feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll pick them up at the end. So as Daniel quite rightly says, at this stage, as you develop into and you're developing as an exporter, you will have done research at this stage around selecting your target market. Within that market, you'll have been conducting a lot of market research into who the ideal customer is, who do we want to sell to, who we make the decisions. So a lot of profiling will be being done at that stage around who do you want to target in the key priority market. You'll also have developed clear route to market information. You know how to get to the client, whether it's through channel partners or whether it's through whether they be agents or wholesalers, stockists, retailers in the target market. And you have overall a clear direction and a clear plan. And this is the implementation piece, really. This is then, right, how do I go about pinpointing the list of building merchants in a particular market, or whether it be security companies or whether it be partners in those particular sectors. It could be anything based on what your business is involved in. So what this webinar is very much focused on, as we said, there is identifying the right partners and then reaching out to secure quality meetings. So moving on then, just before I get into the first section, just want to emphasize as well the importance of that question, who exactly are you targeting in your target export market? You obviously have a lot of knowledge built up from your own home market, but at this stage, again, the key will really be your researching and having conducted really good, robust, credible, detailed research into the target market. So you'll have an understanding of what sectors you want to target, the sizes of the business that you want to focus in on, and where specifically they're located. For example, if it's in the States, is it going to be the East Coast? Is it going to be Texas? Or if it's in Europe, is it going to be France? What particular regions? All of those questions will have been honed in on and hopefully answered at this stage. You'll also have a strong understanding of what specific person you want to be targeting. What is their role and what is their title? There may well also be a number of different contacts within an organization. For example, it might be a facilities manager in particular groups of companies. It might be procurement might also play a part as well. So it's gathering the intelligence and gathering the information on who those people are. And again, coming back to the previous webinar around honing and perfecting your value proposition, my colleague Ruth would have talked about having clear differentiators, a machete edge, as she describes it, of what is your clear differentiator in your target market as well. So it's understanding what those are based on what your prospective clients' needs are also. And also it would be good at this stage to try and to start to pinpoint, who the key competitors are. That'll form part of your market analysis, and how your offering stacks up against theirs, which is all part of the value proposition development as well. So just wanted to set that scene around that first of all. Now moving on, folks, to the actual process of building up your database in target markets and identifying key decision makers, starting with the prospect database development. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to outline a number of different sources of information that can be used, different groups and categories of sources, and that I've used with my clients over the last 20 years. And I'll start off, the top two, I suppose, are becoming more and more attractive and the go-to for us all in terms of finding out market information and finding out prospective client information as well. Just a wee tip around, how I've pinpointed prospective clients and target markets for my clients might be for you if you're aware of, a couple of prospects in particular markets. And I use the example there of construction firms in Spain. If you've got a couple of names of those companies, those target companies that you'd like to target, then I would put those into a search engine, search for those in quotation marks. That will then bring out more sources as to where those companies are present across the internet, and it might be membership lists, it might be associations, etc. Will come out from those searches as well. So it's a tip that I've used in the past for clients that you might want to use yourselves for your specific target markets. I've also been working with companies. I worked with a company recently, for example, based in Wicklow, who were keen to target Salesforce consultants, for example. The company itself was involved in customer experience and software for businesses, and a target partner group for them were Salesforce consultants, as I mentioned, and we uncovered a directory of Salesforce consultants on the App Exchange. That allowed us then to open up prospects across the world, really, and then hone our message after that. Other examples would include, I was working recently for a gate automation manufacturer in Dublin, and they were keen to target the GB market, and we uncovered a source called the securityinformed.com, which is a really good directory of companies across the security sector, manufacturers, distributors, etc., across different product types. It could be searchable, etc. So just a couple of sources that are out there. But if you can find your holy grail of source like that, a directory, even as I mentioned, there an exhibitor list or an event, they come with lists of other kind of similar companies to those you're keen to target. It could also be pinpointing the appropriate industry associations in your target market. Inevitably, and often they would have lists of members too, which could be then fed into your overall prospect database. Chambers of Commerce also is another source that I've used for clients. Another tip as well is it's very easy these days to find out who is winning particular public sector contracts, for example, by target market. That might give you some good information around, right, these companies that are winning these projects, I would like to be part of their supply chain. I'd like to introduce myself to them because we feel we've got something to give. So I'm very aware there's lots of different types of businesses on the webinar today, but a number of those will hopefully resonate. The one at the bottom then is particularly for companies in the construction supply chain arena, and that is the project intelligence and market research platforms, which effectively outline what companies are involved at what stage of construction projects. And that can be fantastic around not just often you might be too late if there's a project already in there that's happening, but it'll give you excellent prospect information for future projects. If it's a specifier, architect, interior designer that you want to target, or even the main contractors, that information is there through sources like Protel, Barber, ABI, as I mentioned on the slide. So again, food for thought for each of you as you try and kind of navigate around pinpointing who is involved in projects in my sector. Just final slide in relation to sources. Also utilize the support that's out there from enterprise development organizations. I know in Northern Ireland, for example, online, if you're targeting materials handling companies, for example, which there's a good group of in Northern Ireland, there's a really good directory that Invest in I have, and they've got directories of other sectors of companies in the north. Now, very mindful that you might not be targeting the north of Ireland, but other economic development organizations will have similar lists to that based on where you're targeting to. So also worth noting, the Enterprise Ireland Market Research Centre is available also for market information and company information as well. So Enterprise Europe Network I've utilised in the past and worked with in the past to help us to identify partners in different markets too. So, take a note of them as a potential organisation to contact for your development into particular export markets. And recently I worked with a client, for example, in Clare, who is a leadership training company and coaching company, and they were keen to target high growth businesses that need maybe a bit of managerial support and development. And we targeted the Fast 50 lists, for example, companies that are growing fast. That allowed us to short circuit the whole, a lot of the uncertainty, and provided almost like an oven-ready kind of directory of companies that we want to prioritize and target. Also, award ceremonies can be useful. Worked with a company recently based in Wicklow, who they are an event management company who allow the event manager software company, I should say, who basically targeted companies who were keen to offer out corporate trips and corporate events and organize corporate events. This business actually helped businesses with that. And we targeted companies that were very much focused on cultural development and cultural well-being, and the awards ceremonies and awards were useful for us to navigate and pinpoint those types of businesses as well across. It was the GB market they were targeting at that stage. So lots and lots of different ways that we can kind of pull together lists, and it is about digging and it is about unearthing it through searches, but also that's the desk research piece. Also, what's very important here in pinpointing prospective clients or partners in export markets will be having conversations with people. We'll be worked with a company there recently who are targeting the French market, for example, and they pinpointed, they were in touch with a number of different prospective clients, and one of them, although it was a bit small, we got into a conversation with them, and they were able to provide us with details and company names of other businesses that might match the criteria for our client much better. So sometimes well-informed conversations with people and context in market can be very, very, very useful and valuable to use businesses. Moving on then from the lists to actually pinpointing key decision makers. I'm going to go into that in more depth later, but LinkedIn obviously is fantastic for that. Also, certain lead generation tools like Sales Navigator, Apollo, and Lead IQ, which I will talk about in a moment. So moving forward, because we've got lots to cover today, just a couple of examples of how we've unearthed prospects in different markets. And here's an example, for example, of one. A client of mine was keen to target the agricultural machinery sector. There's a European-wide association called as you can see, the European Agri-Machinery Association. That's Source, had great information on the market, economic reports, but also a very good directory of national members across Europe. Two examples are on the slide there, the UK association and also the Belgian association, so with contact details, etc. So as well as providing the business with, right, here's potentially great sources across Europe, to show you the type of information that could come through from that. For example, we went into the GB association, and they have a list and directory of all their agri machinery companies on there. So again, we were able to cut and paste the pertinent information from that into our central database, which at this stage was an Excel document, Excel sheet. Another just example, sticking with the agricultural sector, a client based in Mayo were keen to target agricultural equipment dealers in, again, the north of England. And that's the BAGMA, the British Agricultural and Garden Machinery Association, have a map. And this might be common across for associations in your sector as well, might have a map of stockists or of retailers across your region. And in this instance, we were able to zone in on particular regions, click in, and then it would provide the information on who the companies are in that region and some contact information as well, which we then transferred onto Excel databases as well. So it's finding the information and then putting it into a format that's manageable by you, which again we'll come to as we go through the webinar in terms of organizing it all. So moving then from the actually compiling the target companies that you'd like to be doing business with and meeting and talking to actually the key decision makers. we point companies down two routes. One route, and you can use both in tandem, but one route would be the traditional route, and that is, you've got the company information. It's a matter of ringing that company up and asking who would be responsible for such and such within the business. You're keen to send some information out to them. Could you please give me their name and email address? And if the gatekeeper isn't expecting you to be passed or isn't at this stage, you're not asking them to be passed, you yourself to be passed through to the right contact. You're just looking for that initial information. Then you're more likely to get that. And then you put that name and you put that email address into your database for later proper structured approach and sending out the email. So I would advocate, and that would be our go-to. It has been our go-to for clients. I know it takes a bit of time, and it's the more traditional route, but making those calls and just speaking to gatekeepers and just asking that question and then logging that information for later activities. The other very growing way of pinpointing the actual decision makers is obviously through the aforementioned LinkedIn. And LinkedIn obviously has, most of us would be on LinkedIn at this stage, or most of your clients would be on LinkedIn. Prospects, I should say, at this stage would be on LinkedIn. So it's a matter of connecting with them where you can. And also, I would mention at this stage, what I would use for a lot of my clients would be Apollo. There's also Sales Navigator. There's a very good webinar has been delivered by Enterprise Ireland. It's on the Enterprise Ireland YouTube channel around navigating around Sales Navigator, excuse the pun. And there's a good walkthrough from the Enterprise Ireland representative on how to use Sales Navigator, what it shows you. I think it costs £100 a month, Sales Navigator. There might be various elements of it, but so it's worth checking out that webinar that's on YouTube and seeing what it looks like, what Sales Navigator looks like. So going back to Apollo, I've used Apollo with a lot of my clients, and I'm going to show you an example of what that provides. Sure, a proportion of you on the webinar today will know what Apollo is. It's effectively it's an add-on, an accompaniment to LinkedIn. You download it. It's free of charge to download. And what it does, it provides you with, as you can see, I'm going to show a couple of screenshots from a LinkedIn profile. As just an example, I've masked out the name. So as we all go into our LinkedIn and we search a particular contact, that's what we see. And once you have downloaded Apollo, that little dartboard on the right-hand side will come up. So whenever you click on that little icon, whenever you've got this downloaded, it comes up then this screen. As you can see, there's a new box comes up on the corner with the email address of that particular person. Now, this is what LinkedIn doesn't normally provide, is email addresses like this. I've found that in about 70% of cases, 70-80% of cases, there is an email address, but it comes with a bit of a warning. Sometimes it might be an old email address. It needs to, it needs to be a bit of quality checking done on that if possible. But overall, I would often, about 70-80% of the time, it is the right email address for me, and it's about using this wisely. Obviously, we never advocate, mass emails. It has to be to a targeted right person that you feel firmly would benefit from what you offer and is the right contact. So Apollo is a very useful resource for that. Moving on then to another client of mine. Client is based in Dublin, and we worked with them through, they were focusing on the Scandinavian market. The company itself was involved in manufacturing sensory rooms. The market for sensory rooms and sensory education, for example, in Scandinavia, particularly Sweden, is much more advanced than what we are in our part of the world. And the company have pinpointed that through research, and we're keen to target the market after conducting robust market intelligence. And the first step was then to pinpoint, we're keen to engage with the stakeholders in Sweden, ask questions to get more intelligence, to get more information about the market, and to become their friends, build relationships. So we asked, incorporating AI into this whole process, we asked who is head of special education needs in Sweden, and provided the response, as you can see on the slide. Now, we will be sharing these slides at the end, so don't worry about not if you're not able to read it or if I'm going through them too fast. But ultimately, that was the response that we got from ChatGPT at that stage. So then what we did was we searched we used the internet to then look at that particular organization, and then we found a list on their website. So this is all public on their website of who is within their management team. We pinpointed the head of special education support, a lady called Asa Bikstrom, and so we were keen to obviously to target her and let her know and make her aware of what we did, what the company did, what my client did. And then we utilized LinkedIn. So we found Ms. Bikstrom on LinkedIn. We then clicked on our Apollo icon, and her email address came up, which allowed us to then target her and reach out and to try and get a meeting and try and get whether it be a Teams meeting or a direct meeting whenever the company was in market, which they had planned to do in the next couple of months at that stage. And they were then building an itinerary around being over there, including speaking with Ms. Bikstrom. So just an example there, guys, of how we combined research using AI mixed or combined with the websites and combined with LinkedIn and LinkedIn Apollo, just to pinpoint the right contacts and get their information so that we can approach them. Before we move on then to the next step in terms of the actual approach, I want to talk a bit about the just organizing all of this information that we're getting from different sources, and that effectively, mindful of the fact that again in the room today, we will have some of you will have a CRM of various types. Some of you might not, and this can very much all be done by Excel, for example. And we would advocate, setting up Excel might have different worksheets for different sectors that you're targeting, for example. But at this stage, you'll have target company names, and you'll be building upon that on an ongoing basis. You'll be pinpointing key decision makers. That's all desk-based. Some calls will be made as well to pinpoint who they are. Recording and tracking that is very, very important for sales pipeline, for your knowledge. And anytime you speak to someone on that list, then it's a matter of recording the responses and being organized and knowing when the next steps will be, recording when email one went out and when the next follow-up should happen, and having a real structure around that, which again, I'll talk about as we go through the next 15, 20 minutes or so. I would also be color coding that worksheet to maybe pinpoint, who the warmer leads are, who you've spoken to, who you've met with, some that are deciding, some who you haven't got in touch with, and others who might have just through conversations and through responses, just being very clear that it's not relevant to them. So, just color coding and prioritizing the list as well will be important. As I said, continuously adding to it. So yes, organization is very important on this. Moving then to the second part of the webinar, which is overall managing the sales pipeline and securing the meetings. To take a bit of a step back at this stage through the slide, as you can see there, it takes you through the various stages of the sales pipeline, right through from what we're talking about now in terms of lead generation, what we're about to talk about in relation to contacting and qualifying leads and effectively seeking to build relationships, seeking to make the first contacts, to ultimately get speaking with them directly, discussing and listening to what their requirements are, and then weaving in how you can add the value. It's all about the building relationship piece, and then that's what we'll kind of cover those areas, that kind of contacting, lead qualification, and building relationships piece through trying to set up a meeting now, as we'll talk about now. So yes, so first step in approaching, there are a number of different ways that this can happen. The normal kind of, I suppose, best practice way that I would work with clients would be emailing, and emailing combined with telephone follow-up. Less and less, obviously, nowadays we use posts. Some of my clients have worked out, depending on the sector, depending on the type of target audience, that some very, very targeted, precise letters, posting letters with attached document information has been useful for them. Again, we're all trying to be as green as possible here, environmentally friendly. That's why I wouldn't advocate ever mass mail shots, etc. But just if there's a small group of people who you'd like to target, sometimes to cut through the emails that they receive a lot of the time, and to cut through, maybe they might be receiving a lot of LinkedIn messages. So a nice different way might be to send out, someone said, a small number of well-targeted letters to people as well. Okay, but that's not for everybody. LinkedIn as well. A lot of us would be doing, in mail, sending messages that way. I would be an advocate of connecting with people, but not trying to oversell too quickly. I would be thanking people for the connection, and not saying too much more than maybe a small introduction on the business, a couple of lines, and nice to be connected. That would be where I would go with that. And then as they're connected with you, it'd be important for you to put good, interesting content onto your LinkedIn so that they can, view that and see that, and that'll help you to nurture that contact as well. But just be careful of jumping in too fast to trying to sell, certainly via LinkedIn. But that's where Apollo can be our friend, whereby you can perhaps pinpoint their email address and thank them for linking in, and sending them some information about your business, a good intro, which I'll show you a couple of examples of now. Yes, also events and networking. And what I'd say about all those 5 points, guys, is the approach and the content of the approach is very, very important. We need to be ensuring that the approach is resonating. It's succinct, I should say, and it's resonating with the buyer. So it comes back to your knowledge of the customer and what they need. It comes back to, again, the value proposition piece. What is it that makes you different? And it's getting that across, and it's making sure that that's very clear. Hand in hand with that is the importance of having really strong sales materials. Now, the first email you wouldn't be sending those, but for they might respond. The prospective client might respond asking for more information, or they might go onto your website, or they might go on to your LinkedIn. So it's ensuring that you have and you're prepared to, whether it be to send out supplementary information, or whether it's being strong and online from an online presence perspective, that your website is representing your company and your brand very, very well. That your social media presence is also strong and professional and in line with the brand that you want to be projecting. So it's considering all that in line with this first approach that I'm talking about here. And also in terms of approaching too, the point I'd like to make around that is just thinking about, again, your target client. When are they going to be? When is their buying times, for example? Different industries have different buying times. We all know that December can be a very bad month for a lot of target sectors. But what you should know in each of your businesses is, what's the more likely time for my buyer to be attentive in terms of time of the year. And also be considering what time of the day, what time of the week is it best to be sending out introductory emails to people as well, and following up. So it's just thinking about the other end of this as well, and putting yourself in the shoes of the buyers also. So it's thinking about all those things at this stage too, guys. And then also always monitoring the impact, what is working, what's not. So another point before I get into a real good example of a case study of how I've used and to bring this all real for you, is a key point I want to make around this is having the right mindset whenever you're sending emails out, and very importantly, trying to get the follow-up meeting. Just companies and dealt with a lot of clients in relation to this, and at this stage you've done a lot of customer knowledge gathering. You know who the customer is, you know what you offer and what they need, and how you can be of a solution to them. You have good, strong market knowledge, which will boost your credibility whenever you're speaking with them as well. And you're very clear about what makes you different as a business. So that should also all be set in stone. That should also then give you the confidence to be to, I suppose, deliver those other features that I mentioned there on the slide. Being authentic, having conversations with people about their experiences, what their needs are, and then making that match. Conversations. I would always advocate to my clients not to think of this as less as a sales pitch, and more of you're offering a solution to someone who needs your product or service ultimately, or whose life is going to be, made easier by utilizing your service, or they're going to save money by utilizing your service, or hassle, or much more responsive, etc. So it's thinking about it from that perspective, less as a sales pitch and more of a conversation about how we can help make their lives better, their working lives better. And would incorporate, because another big challenge for companies is the whole, because it's not easy prospecting. Not going to pretend that it is. Its tenacity is very, very crucial in this, and it's creating the time, protecting the time that you have to do this as well. And being very selfish about, right, on a certain such a day, I'm going to make sure that I make the calls to pinpoint the contacts. I'm going to send out 10 emails, say, for example, this week. I'm going to follow them up in a couple of days. So having that structure so that you know that you're sending out some emails, you're following up on a certain day, and then you're sending more emails out that day so you can follow up the next day. So it's without getting too far ahead of yourself. You want to ensure that it's all manageable, and you're not just sending an email out and it's not getting any follow-up. You have to build that into your working lives and build that into your time as well, because I know that's a big challenge for businesses as well. But the structure is important and what works for you. There's very little point in sending out 50 emails and not being able to follow them up. I would be sending smaller chunks to priority contacts and then chasing them up within a certain number of days. And sending out follow-up emails or lifting up the phone and creating that distraction-free space for you to do that. Okay, so I might come back to that in a second, but I'm mindful of the time. Okay, so just an example of a company, one of my clients based in Northern Ireland who were keen to target the Republic of Ireland. I'm not going to go through each of those bullet points, but overall, they were successful in their home market. They were keen to, what they did, was they were involved in the service they offered was they moved and relocated factory equipment and full-scale factories. So they were keen, and they were doing some really household name clients in Northern Ireland, and Bombardier, to name one, and they were keen to offer what they did on their export market on the doorstep, being the Republic of Ireland. And they hadn't really engaged in too much business development. It was all reactive. So a lot of a lot of what you might resonate with yourselves in some cases. So the plan was then for us to conduct the overall research. The research was done to identify that, yes, it's very much a viable market for us. There are we want to target the food manufacturing businesses and pharma businesses, and we pinpointed that what their needs are. We pinpointed who they were, the top 2 bullet points there. So desk research was done to identify both the who they were, using a number of different sources, and then at that stage we were picking up the phone and speaking with gatekeepers to ask who would be responsible for that within the business. Now, obviously big companies here that we're targeting. It was a project that really needed a lot of tenacity and a lot of perseverance. But what we did was, we pinpointed the key decision makers, as I say. The flow here was to send out an initial email. I'm going to show you that email in a second, and you'll have it in the slides. Then this next step was to follow up that email 2 days after the first email went. And then there was a telephone follow-up. That second email was more succinct, much shorter, just a bit of just following up on my previous email. It'd be good to get be great to have a conversation with you. Something very succinct. But then very importantly, then we're getting on the phone. We're getting on the phone and speaking to these people. And again, it was a challenge because our target audience here were factory managers, maintenance managers, people who were probably very regularly on the shop floor, so to speak. But we knew, very confident, that this was a service that if they didn't need today, they would need very, very soon at some stage. So that was our remit here. And what we did, so this is an example of the email that was sent out on behalf of this company. I've masked again the company name out, but what it had, I'm not going to go through it line by line, guys, again, but what I want to shine a light on here is quite succinct, it's broken up, it's not too text heavy. Introduction to the business, a nice first line with a link to our website. An overview of the business, and very much in those tick bullet points there was effectively the value proposition, what the company offered the client. So we're ensured to get that across, and then to back that up, then the bullet points of the clients that we have in our home market was a great way of again reducing the risk in the mind of the buyer. And thinking, right, these guys that work with these types of companies, they must know what they're doing. And it was about attracting the attention of the prospect and boosting our overall credibility. And very importantly, the next step around that email was our directors we'll be in contact. The director is going to be in your area at such a date, and we'd love to come in and have a conversation with you about the solution and tell you a bit about some of the case studies we've done. That's the next step that we were keen to get with that particular client. Also, just to show you a screenshot around the tool that we used to gather all this information together. That had, it's quite maybe a wee bit blurry there, but ultimately it was an Excel sheet. It had a status, a meeting arranged or meeting close to being arranged. That's what's in blue. In yellow were the companies that we needed to call back. As you can see there, we had the positions of the prospects, maintenance managers, warehouse director, property manager, I think that says, and then the names and all the details, nicely organized. And as you can see, different worksheets as well for food companies outside of Dublin, food companies in Dublin, etc., pharma inside Dublin and outside of Dublin as well. So just organizing it in that way. That was what we used then. Getting on the phone to contact these people with a nice brief in front of us as to what we wanted to cover in that. What was going to be an initially short conversation, just to get in front of them. Our aim was to get in front of them. Look, we're going to be down. We'd love to just talk to you a bit more detail about what we've offered and what we can offer you in the future. And ultimately, that was very successful for the business in terms of it gave them a structure to follow, a pipeline to follow. It was a challenge getting the meetings, but whenever they got the meetings, it proved very successful. And within a short space of time, they were actually doing business with these companies as well. I'm not saying this is the norm, but with a good structured process that's followed and followed up on, recorded. You've got the right messages, the right content, then it can reap the rewards. Just another example there of going back to the company who were targeting Sweden. They were keen to pinpoint partners in the region, and that was an example of the email that we sent to introduce us to a number of partners. As you can see there, intro with some links to the website and links to the LinkedIn. Just a bit of a conversation, I suppose, a bit in the middle there around what we do and what we offered and the other types of businesses that we work with, the sensory partner of such and such, who the company and the potential partner in Sweden would have been aware of. And then just as the next step, possible in this instance to arrange a Teams meeting initially over the next week or two to discuss the portfolio and answer any questions, etc. Best regards. Another example of an approach email, and just to show you, this is the reality of one example. Is 2 days later, we sent another email, a bit more localized in terms of the content. As you can see there, we have translated the good morning or good afternoon, whatever it was, and a very quick follow-up to my email below. Would it be possible to arrange a Teams meeting with management team in relation to potential future opportunities? Look forward to your reply, and then the sign-off in the language as well. And then the response that same day from that potential partner was the fact that just today we discussed your products. The particular contact will return to work, and we can arrange a Teams meeting after that. Have a nice weekend, and that's signed off by the purchasing and logistics manager. So again, that shows you an example of how this works and can work in reality. But at the same time, I'm not going to mismanage your expectations by saying, following up from an email, you're going to get automatic responses. this is probably across a lot more emails being sent, but you have to be visible and you have to get the timing right. If you get the timing right, then it increases chances of success. So just mindful of the time here as well, because I wanted to get some questions in. Just wanted to flag a couple of points. One that I've already touched upon around the importance of marketing and wrapping good marketing around this. It's important for you to be visible around where your audience hangs out, for want of a better term. You know, if your audience is more likely to be on LinkedIn, ensure that you've got a strong LinkedIn presence. If it's more TikTok, or if it's whatever it might be, you know, have that knowledge and make sure you're very credibly visible on those sources as well. That will back up your your sales activities. Will boost overall chances of success in terms of you trying to get meetings with potential clients. Just a couple of close-off points then, guys, in relation to the nurturing piece and handling objections. So just a couple of minutes on this. Really, you know, I've been talking so far about introductory emails and about making first approaches. It's very important to note at this stage that it's you know, it's rare that you're going to get a response straight off. It can happen, but it's rare that it can happen. Sometimes this takes, as I keep mentioning, perseverance and activity and follow-up. And what we call that is nurturing. You know, it's nurturing and engaging leads. So there'll be an initial email, I'll mention a follow-up email, there'll be a couple of calls, but you know, you still might not get responses, but do not see that as rejection, or do not see that as they're not interested. It's important to keep the communication and keep the touch points, you know, live, and you know, send and continue to send, not emails all the time, but emails that are maybe sent, you know, once every month, every couple of months, or whatever it might be, to keep on top of mind of these contacts. Because they might have the need now, they might have the time now, but there might be a time in the future whereby they will be interested, and you want to be visible, again, using that word visible again, but you want to be part of that conversation. So continue to send targeted emails, maybe with an update on a project that you've delivered or a new product that you're offering. Personalize the follow-ups as well. Maybe if you're attending an event, you might want to ask them if they're going to be at the event, or if they'll be available whenever you're attending that event in the target market. Consider also putting up posts and through LinkedIn or through your social media around, you know, blog posts around, you know, any research reports that are of interest to them in your industry, and overall, you know, being that person that they'd like to do business with, and that you know what you're talking about, and that you're a credible person in your sector. So bear that in mind too. And also other ways of nurturing leads, as I outlined in the slide there, what might be LinkedIn engagement, might be, as I mentioned there already, sharing success stories. It might also be about hosting webinars and inviting them along as well to that. Building relationships, and being there as and when they have the need to buy. Okay, so just shining a bit of light here on terms of the objection handling. Sometimes you might get, you know, responses that are a bit disconcerting around, you know, very busy at the moment, and that might be the case. You know, I think you have to put yourself in the position of the person at the other end of the line or the email, in terms of, you know, being ready for any objections that they might have. For example, if they're busy at the moment, just emphasize the fact that you're flexible and that you might be in the area. You'd love to have a coffee or a tea, might be a 15-20 minute conversation with them. Happy with the current supplier. That's where you emphasize on the differentiator, the value proposition, how you can add real value, the return on investment that might be there as well. It's too expensive. It might be about pricing and talking to them and getting the chance to talk through what value added that you can bring to the table as well. So the key, I suppose, emphasis there is not seeing an objection as rejection. It's using it as an opportunity to engage in dialogue and conversation with them as well. So yeah, just I want to touch upon that point around objection handling, because you will get those questions, and what I would say is preempt them as well. Preempt any common questions or frequently asked questions that you might think would be coming at you, and ensure that they're covered off in your sales material or your marketing material as well. So just to close off before we get into some questions, guys, it's approaching 10 to 3. Or 10 to 4 where Daniel is. Managing the sales pipeline and securing meetings. So overall, a lot of information I think was covered there in the last 50 minutes or so. Just I want to emphasize the importance of planning the research-based strategy around your workloads, around who's actually going to be delivering this. It might be you as an individual, you might have someone who you can delegate it to, but ensure that there's a clear, divvying up of that work, and it's clear who's going to be delivering it. Also, make sure it's as targeted as possible. That's why we emphasize, getting the prospect brief at the start very right. Know who you're targeting. Developing the tools is going to be very important as well. Read it from the client's perspective and ensure the value proposition is maximized. Make sure everything's linking in with your marketing also, and just consider the right timing from the perspective of the client, and continue to nurture. This isn't a standalone set of emails sent out, as I'm sure you all know, and then it's let's see who responds. You got to be consistent and persistent in the delivery of this, and that's what's going to win. That's what's going to win this challenge is the right messages, your solution being. You being confident in the solution, and it being a solution that that will resonate with your target market, and getting that across and ensuring the right people know about it. So, guys, I think that's all I have to say for now, anyway. And maybe pass you back to Daniel. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you, Gary. Such an interesting presentation, and you shared so many new things, I think, and very insightful. And I particularly also really liked the real life examples you brought in there. Makes this whole piece a bit more tangible. Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Maybe focus on the timeline, Gary, for basically from the first contact to a real contract. In your experience, what is a realistic time frame from first outreach to closing a deal, especially if you're selling into a market for the first time, you have no reference yet? What is a realistic time frame to think of?
Good question, Daniel. Realistic time scale or time frame can be so varied, really and truly so varied across different sectors. It depends on the target market, it depends on the sector, it depends on the size of the target company as well. So often it might take a while for the message to get across, to get in front of the right person. It might take a number of follow-ups, a number of touch points. So so the initial outreach to meetings can, in some instances, without mismanaging expectations, if the need is there, you might time it right and you might get a meeting fairly quickly. But what I would do is I would as part of my export action plan, I would be scheduling visits to the export market, and I would be trying to build meetings around that. Because the sooner you can get in front of these people, the more likelihood there is of projects coming through from it as well. So ultimately, I suppose to answer your question, it's whenever. It's hard to determine exactly. It can be quicker. Sometimes it can be quicker than other times, Daniel. But ultimately, if you can get in front of them and you can get the right messages across, the likelihood of that happening sooner rather than later is there. So you're in the conversation whenever the need is there with the client. I suppose ultimately, Daniel, hope that's answered your question in a long way around.
Yeah, so true. And it's a difficult question, of course, because it depends on the sector, the context the company is in, of course. From our experience, we know that it can take a while sometimes. So patience, I think, is very important there. But once you indeed have that first sale, if you have that first reference, it will make it so much easier to build on that reference and grow the sales into your market. So yeah. Very good one. Next question we received is, I think it's one we know, right? The no replies and the rejections. How do you deal with that from your experience?
I think it's key, Daniel, in that circumstance, to remember that this is a journey. There has to be, and again, it's coming back to what's at the other end of the calls. But in every client I've worked with, you're going to have an element of no replies and rejections. Absolutely. It's there's so many different variables here. It's about getting to the right person at the right time, and then it's getting them on the phone at the right time as well. So never ever get too downhearted about the rejections and the no replies. And often, sometimes in certain markets, for example, we've targeted clients of mine have targeted the Dutch market. Would you believe recently,
Oh, yeah.
Daniel? And we've actually sent out the information, the pertinent information. We're happy with it, and we got back. We did get a response, but it was like, no, we're not interested. Very direct. But
Yeah.
direct, not meaning to be rude, just it just didn't fit with their with their own business and that, and it's just very so sometimes the point here is sometimes you are going to get that very direct response, but again, don't let that put you off the market or put you off the pursuing this. It's just in some cultures they're very, in terms of the way they respond to queries like that, is we've considered it, but it's not going to fit, and they just do it in a very succinct, very direct way. So, but just always remember that the next email, the next call could be the key call. Just always bounce on to the next one, and the best practice and it comes back to the mindset and having that hard shell that I mentioned in the email as well. And having that persistence is right. You are going to get rejections. You are going to get gatekeepers dismissing you. But park that, move to the next one. Park that, move to the next one.
Yeah.
There's always a human at the other side of this, and just remember all the time, the mindset is you have got an offering that can help them. So if it's not going to resonate with the person that you phone, you get a rejection from, it will with the next person. So always keep that positive mind frame, to the fore of your thinking.
Yeah, like that one. You have to be bold and persistent. And being in
That's right.
sales is not easy, of course, to keep that positive mindset. But I think from the rejections, you can also learn. So I think
Yeah.
that's also very important to, don't take it personal, learn from the rejections, and also follow up on these rejections, understand why they're not interested. Indeed, yes. I think we have another question coming in. It's about cold calling. I think we have become quite comfortable with sitting behind our desk, the digital approach, all the different platforms and tools we now have to reach out to parties. But when does it actually still make sense to pick up the phone, Gary? And how many times should you follow up by phone without stalking, of course, your potential buyer?
This is the danger, it's getting that balance right, Daniel. It's really and truly, I think so many businesses and so many clients of mine, the go-to is to, I'm not saying hide behind, but it's safer and it's more comfortable to send out an email and expect the response just purely to come from that. Rarely is that the case. It can happen. Sometimes you might hit it at the right time, but more often than not, and this is where each of the businesses here, and some of you who've got this right and who are currently doing this, there's less and less people picking up the phone to speak to people. So it's almost become appreciated and respected by people at the other end, especially if you're ringing and it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I emphasize the word conversation. So there's a space for both digital outreach, as hopefully I got through during the webinar. The digital outreach is very, very important. It's important to look and for your brand to be very, very strong across all the digital forums and channels. But what's really going to really build relationships is getting on the phone and then speaking with people ultimately directly. And that's where, no matter all the digital and all the AI that's out there, people still want to interact with other people, to look at them in the whites of the eyes, or to speak to them, hear a human voice, because that's where relationships and trust is built and credibility is built. So digital is important, but do not ever, I would advocate, don't ever kind of think that it's going to be a replacement or a substitute. Do get skilled at getting on the phone, have a little bit of a brief of what you want to maybe talk about or cover during that call, but have it as a conversation. Because it might be a challenge, getting to the right person. But once you get them, they'll be interested in having that conversation and hearing your experiences, hearing how you've helped other businesses in their sectors, etc., to succeed. So yeah, I'm mindful of the time. I won't continue on and that, but hopefully you've got the
very
key
very
messages there.
insightful, Gary, and indeed, I think cold calling should definitely be a part of your outreach mix. Basically, the options you have, and it also depends on which country you are. Like for in Germany, it's not really well received if you pick up the phone cold calling. That don't really like it. They actually want to meet you in a trade fair, for example. But if you personalize it, if you indeed look at their website and mention something you see on the website, and then ask like, "Hey, can I speak to this person to further have a discussion on this?" So yeah, we actually already made it to the last bit of this webinar. So Gary, maybe a last bit of advice for the audience. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think sticking to the structure is going to be very, very important. We've all got working weeks, we've all got distractions outside. So have that structure, have that, build it into your working week. And that's talking about business development, especially in export markets. It's not going to happen overnight. So you gotta work hard at it, and it is going to take time. So and keeping those initial approaches as succinct as possible as well. Being open-minded about your overall approach. And as we just talked about, picking up the phone or attend the event, pinpoint the right events in your target market and get at them, get into them and do some research and do some, scheduling in advance and just be as professionally as dogged as possible in this and have the confidence in your research. If the research is done right, that your product is needed. That's key to this as well. So yeah, that's my kind of final parting words.
Great.
Daniel, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for sharing your insights and experience. If we move to the last slide, the only thing I wanted to share with the audience is that next week we have our upcoming webinar. It actually builds a little bit on this one, on the selling part, and it will focus entirely on how to build a sales pitch deck that actually converts. So next Thursday, that is same time. And we will also be organizing a last webinar on routes to markets, choosing the right path for international growth. Date still needs to be confirmed, but we will be emailing you and informing you once we know more. So thank you again for your participation, and we hope you found it an insightful webinar, and see you soon. Thank you.
Good.